Hi all, Unready here again. It's been a minute, but I'm back and ready to go with a new computer after the last one crapped out on me. And hence why I've been a little quiet recently. But with all that said, I'm keen to dive into things, so let's get cracking. Now, if you saw one of my last videos on Boy Boy and the CIA base, you may have noticed that Boy Boy brought friends with him when he attempted his failed invasion. Now, one of these is his other half, I Did a Thing, but there's also another face in there as well, Friendlyjordies. Now, I had never heard of or seen Friendlyjordies before this video, and his parts in it stood out to me as being rather odd, even for a Boy Boy video.
No, we should.
They're gonna shoot us.
Give us the sign. There's the sign.
Holy shit.
Oh, it just says no through road.
Like, come on, you can see it's a through road. Look.
Yeah, this is the place.
Okay, now that was meant to be a joke, I think, but like, dude, does this guy not, I think it was Geordie who said that? Does he not understand what a fucking through road is? It's like, okay, through road doesn't mean like, having no through road doesn't mean that the road terminates like 10 feet from the sign and goes off the edge of a fucking cliff. What it means is that the road that you're on doesn't go to anywhere else. It has one fixed destination that you stop in. Again, this is meant to be a joke, but these guys are just so infantile and stupid. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if they didn't know what a through road was. So...
The thing that stuck out to me the most was his attitude. For a guy who calls himself friendly, he sure seems to be like really angry all the time. Chill, bro, jeez. So all of this intrigued me, and I wanted to know more about this guy, but I wasn't sure from having a brief look over his content that there'd be much for me to cover. I did look at his coverage of the Gough Whitlam affair also, but I didn't really think I could cover it without basically repeating myself. Perhaps I might look at that in a future video sometime, I don't know. But what really changed my mind on this topic was you, dear viewers, specifically a viewer named AJ1777, who suggested I do a video on Geordies directly. So, with a bit of prompting, I looked a bit deeper, and as I did so, I found some good content that I could review. So thanks for the suggestion, AJ. Right, so to get into this a little bit more, Jordan Shanks, or Friendlyjordies as he goes by online, is an Australian political YouTuber and independent journalist. He's quite a large presence with over 1.3 million subscribers and mainly focuses his content around Australian domestic politics, which makes him stand out from the pack, as most political commentators focus more heavily on the US and the UK in terms of political events. Now, looking at his content overall, I can say that there are generally two kinds of videos he makes. The first type is what I would call serious investigative journalism, where Geordies and his team get up close and personal with local council corruption and even war. The second type is focused entirely on Australian domestic politics, with Geordies giving his thoughts on current affairs. Now, even though he is friends with Boy Boy and clearly shares some of his tanky positions on things, such as here,
broadly held views that aren't really pushed by the media to the same degree, i.e., I don't think most Australians are cool with our spy bases being used to help conduct bombing campaigns that overwhelmingly kill civilians, and it would serve Australia well if that view was further ventilated.
Where he repeats the idea that Pine Gap actively guides missiles and bombs on target in Israel. It doesn't, it just gives intel, as I established in my last video. So while he's a bit similar in some respects, he's quite a different kettle of fish content-wise. Now, I'd say with most of his content, while I definitely don't agree with the style and creative choices, it's relatively solid on the information front. I'd give it, like, overall probably 50% of his videos are good, 50% a bit iffy. And he also does a decent job of reporting on serious topics. And I won't accuse him of cowardice either, as he's had his house firebombed at least once by criminals and has had members of his team arrested at least once due to the stuff he covers. So I'm sorry about that, Geordies. Regardless of what else I say in this video, I am absolutely against that kind of violence, and I hope that you and your team stay safe doing what you do. But despite all of this, there is a bit of a fatal flaw to his coverage, and that essentially bumps him down from a solid B to an F- in my books, in terms of political content creation. So today I figured we would address a video of his that I saw when researching him, which perfectly encapsulates all of the issues I have with him as a creator. This video was uploaded on November 27th, 2020, and consists of Jordies critiquing an article that the Sydney Morning Herald wrote about him. It is rather unique as a video, as it actually forced me to stop recording in my usual React style about 20 minutes in. Really, I was going away and I just had to stop. And that's for reasons I'll get into later. But I figured I'd show you what I did manage to get before more broadly analysing Jordies as a creator. Right, with that being said, let's go! Alright, hello everybody. We are about to start up. He gets right into it, so I'm just giving you a little intro now so he doesn't start screaming into your ears. Alright, let's begin.
How to solve a problem like Friendlyjordies? Well, I don't know, but you probably shouldn't have wondered it aloud on the front page of a newspaper, Lucy Cormick, because now I'm your problem. Wish I wasn't. I do feel sorry for the...
I kind of wish he wasn't as well, to be honest, after looking at this once. I'm going to have to sit through it again with you guys. Carry on.
This state parliamentary reporter who was working the beat for what, 2 weeks at the time of its publishing? Oh, Lucy, allow me to draw a diagram of what happened to you, doll. Here's the bus, here's you. Surely you're superior.
Okay, I can see why he's friends with Boy. I can see he already has a bizarre and childish sense of humour. It's not quite on the level of some of the stuff that they've done, but it's getting there.
Superiors knew I wasn't just going to cop a smear campaign. I'm not Bill Shorten. So really dwell on this point. You mean as much to your peers as you be to me, and I'm about...
I just realised I should probably give some context to everyone. So, there's this article that you saw the headline of it just before, that the Sydney Morning Herald wrote about Friendlyjordies, and this was a few years ago. I believe this was in 2020. I can flash the specific dates on the screen right now. So yeah, he is reacting to this article about him and is sort of trying to say that it's this big smear campaign and it's very negative and as a hit piece, when it's, as I'll go to show throughout this, it's really quite a benign article that I'm not sure why he's getting so upset about. Alright, let's keep listening to him.
Had to drag you through the dirt like your Mad Max at the beginning of Fury Road. They sacrificed you to preserve their contacts within the Nationals. The Nationals. It's like they bumped you so they could score points with not even Cher. Sonny. You were bumped for Sonny. And it gets even worse because as soon as he pissed off Cher, they then bumped Sonny.
Okay, I'm a little lost, frankly, as to where he's going with this. The Nationals, I think, is an Australian political party. There's like Labour, and they have a Labour and a National Party like we do here in New Zealand. Okay.
The reason I'm using that analogy, by the way, is don't you think these impersonators look exactly like Gladys Berejiklian and Bruz? They sacrificed you to an entity that they then went on to sacrifice. Sucked in. I'd say you're like the animal that's killed for the last meal of a prisoner on death row, but that animal's better off as their suffering ends.
Oh, what the... I can swear now, it's been X amount of time. What the fuck is he talking about? Like, I've explained to you that this is about the article, but like, my god, this is getting into some, like, this is going deep, man. Like, this is a deep level of kind of personal attack that is, like, not called for at all. Like, you haven't even shown us what she's done yet, Jordies. Like, you should probably get into that at least before doing this, right? Otherwise it just makes you look like a fucking grinning psychopath, which, it's not too far from the truth.
Yours is going to be eternal. You and that man whose face looks like it's been stung by a hive of bees, Fergus Hunter, will forever be hung up in the Friendlyjordies Hall of Journo scalps along with such notable game as Pigman, Rob the Blob, and of course Stuart Little.
If you haven't guessed by now, this is his whole thing. He gets really, like, really personal with journalists and just absolutely hammers them for even the slightest bit of criticism. Yeah.
Forever enshrined as living paragons of Chomsky's propaganda model, Mostly because we know it triggers you to be compared to Chomsky, but also because you're just such perfect specimens. Institutionalized vassals of a dying institution whose product is institutionalization. You're essentially human battery hens that don't even understand they're in a cage and produce nothing.
That's a that is a great image. Like, should this be the thumbnail? That gives me some ideas. Anyway, okay, so he's comparing them to being propaganda. For Chomsky, again, pretty heavy accusation, particularly when you haven't actually shown a single fucking thing they've said so far, mate. Like, settle down, get into the content, please. We're only 2 minutes into this. Ugh.
Nothing of value. So in honour of the fact that you hate acknowledging that you're owned by Channel 9...
This is Lucy Cormack here.
Hey.
And Fergus Hunter.
And you guys are with Fairfax 9, is that it?
With the City Morning Herald, yeah.
Okay. Lucy, Fergus, this is your taxidermy.
Okay, so he's making a joke there about this particular company, the Sydney Morning Herald, which is owned by Fairfax 9. So it's like he's saying, oh yeah, you're with Fairfax 9, and they're like, no, the Sydney Morning Herald, because they're right. They are with the Sydney Morning Herald, that's owned by Fairfax 9. You know, it's sort of a weird, like, I guess technically both of them are correct, but it's just like, why are you splitting hairs over this? Other than to be a pedantic fucking asshole. There's no reason that you would do that. Oh god.
In other words, you're stuffed. They sent me a list of questions. The first one was, where do you say the mainstream media fails? Jeez, Luce, I know that you wanted a short sentence to that you probably wouldn't have published anyway, but I'm awfully sorry. The rest of this video is going to have to be focused on answering just that question, and even then, I'll barely be scratching the surface of how deep my disdain is for you, your publication, and the rest of the self-important cancers that infest this democracy and euphemistically refer to themselves as the press.
You can't, like, sum it up a bit? Like, well, if your mum asked you this question, what would you say to her? Like, I think, sure, there are some things that brevity doesn't do justice to, but if you can't even answer the question without without writing a freaking manifesto, like, maybe you've overcomplicated it a bit. Like, surely you can give them something. As you say, I mean, if you think she's not going to publish it anyway, then just give her a brief line and move on with your day. Like, why are you sitting here freshing about this, mate? What are you doing?
I'll try to give you as brief an answer as I possibly can, i.e. an hour, but we'll start with what scares me most about you free radicals. You're all indoctrinated. Heads of ISIS would look at you and think, God damn, there's no reasoning with some motherfuckers, man. A fan of mine.
I'm going to assume that that's an in-joke that I didn't get and not just straight-up racism. I'm hoping that that's an in-joke. Yikes.
Wrote to Lucy Cormack, and she responded with this email, which thank you so much for forwarding it on, mate, as you've uncovered the sideshow Bob of justifications. Rake smack after rake smack in the face, starting with...
Well, come on, show it to us then, for fuck's sake. I'm sorry, I know he is actually about to show us, but it just pisses me off. This is like the 6th time he said how terrible this stuff is, and he hasn't even shown it to us yet. Like, if it's so bad that you can say all this crap about it, it should speak for itself, right? Why didn't you lead off with that? So, this is kind of priming me to think that maybe, just maybe, and I actually do know because I've already watched this, that the stuff that is going to be presented isn't as bad as he's saying it is.
I feel the story was fair. There's that journalistic objectivity we've all heard so much about. I don't know, guys. I just have this, like, really weird hunch that I'm perfect. I'll give you this much, Lucy. It does give a whole new meaning to believe it and you'll see it, doesn't it?
Christ, and then he interrupts the first actual point of him explaining what it is with another random, wild personal attack. Like, he can't... It's such an irony that this guy calls himself Friendlyjordies when... We're 3 minutes into this video, and he's done nothing but just launch disgusting personal attack after personal attack on this particular journalist and her colleague. Just like, what the hell, man?
Because how did you, almighty Judge Dredd of your own biases, determine that your story was, quote, fair? The story laid out facts on both sides, including supporters of hers. Facts on both sides. From the paper that brought you fits of smugness over the phrase alternative facts about a year ago, now presents facts on both sides. And what are these?
Wait, I'm confused. Do you want this paper to be fair and balanced or not? Because them pointing out facts on both sides is something that media is meant to do. Like, they're meant to be objective and look at things from all perspectives and let the reader make up their own mind, unless it's an opinion piece or has an agenda about it. So Geordie is trying to say that they should be more objective, but then is saying that they shouldn't be. I'm very confused.
It's two sides. Salacious and boring? That's what you've presented here. In fact, that should be the slogan of your paper. Let's look at these fair facts. And in case you're wondering, that was a play on words on Fairfax, and yes, I'm proud of it. He started in 2013. Well, that is a fact.
Okay, so the first thing they said about you is true. So, wow, already I can see the depth of their lies here with the first thing they've said about you being fucking true. Alright.
Same way that the Young Divas no longer tours is a fact, which I for one would like to go on record as saying that is the biggest loss this country's ever had. But we'll chalk that nothing statement up with the positive side, just so there's something in there, as what followed was that I've interviewed a bunch of Labour politicians, which as you can plainly see from the headlines of the subsequent attack pieces that followed. Friendlyjordies at centre of stoush between Port Stephens Mayor and MP over association. Labour MPs concerned by leaders' links to YouTube star. Labour needs to distance itself from vlogger Friendlyjordies.
So, I mean, he's active in politics, he's got a big following, and he's talking to politicians. Yeah, seems like something journalists would be interested in. I'm very confused. Do you not want them to be talking about you? In which case, why are you a public figure, and why do you have a YouTube channel with millions of subscribers if you don't want people's attention, and you don't want them to talk about you? I'm utterly lost. Alright, carrying on.
Geordie shocked to discover there's better sources of sweet and sour pork than Canton. Smeared. Clearly, it was a signal to the rest of the press. Attack Labour MPs for going on Friendlyjordies. Why? Because they want a monopoly of act.
Holy what? Okay, that's a pretty big accusation. What? So one bad article? Well, not even bad, because as I've said, it's not bad. One article about you is a signal that you're going on an attack against you? Like, what the what? What are you talking about?
Access to these politicians. They don't want them going on a platform that won't interrupt them every 6 seconds with, all you ever do is talk about electric cars. Why won't you talk about the struggle of Indigenous actors in the Sydney theatre scene? They also want to take whatever crap comes out of my mouth and stick it to the Labour Party like it's their official party policy line. As now 2 Labour politicians have pointed out, the press never does this to the Liberal politicians who go on Alan Jones or Ray Hadley.
What? Okay, So again, let me get this straight. You're associating yourself with a certain political party and then being mad that you get associated with them. Like, no shit, bro. What the hell?
And after dealing with you, I truly think the reason you keep making the same mistake over and over again is because you're dumb. But the reason your superiors are making you take this angle is what is known as wedging. They're hoping they'll force a Labour politician to distance themselves from me, whatever that means, because how much more distant do you want them to be? I've spent more time wondering where the batteries are in Coles than I've spent with Christina Keneally. Yet you'll hope that one day I'll snap because, oh what? Someone said something a little dismissive. That's it. Properly funded emergency services are going to have to wait. I'm supporting family first.
I mean, I know you're not changing your political views here, Geordie, but like, isn't that kind of what you're doing with this video? If you think their plan was to put out a whole bunch of stuff for you to have a hissy fit about, well, they kind of succeeded, didn't they? Because you've made a whole hour-long video where you got super fucking mad about every single line in the whole article. Like, holy Christ. The irony and just the lack of self-awareness here is astonishing. I can see why Boy likes to hang out with him. He's like the Australian version of Hassan. Whew.
If your goal is to distance me from decision makers, I do not require your lame and inept services. I do a far better job of scaring off politicians I like just by existing. Thank you very much. Those are, go read it,
Not
positive
sure why that
facts
shot was
the year I
necessary, but okay.
started, and a thinly veiled threat to Labor politicians, which actually changed my mind. That should be your slogan. SMH. If you don't shut your f***ing mouth, Jody, you'll see this shit on the Telegraph tomorrow. Oops. Too late. Now let's contrast that with the negative facts they've highlighted, which were an allegation of me stalking a journalist. Well, that's a bit more flavoursome than the year I started in, isn't it? As well as 2 sentences that I said...
Okay, now, we'll get into this in a second, but like, Jordan, they're gonna fucking introduce you to their audience who's probably made up of boomers and have no idea who you are. Like, I didn't know who you are, and I'm like a relatively young person just across the pond from you, so... yeah, their audience is not going to be absolutely clueless. So yeah, having some basic info like your name and your channel and like what you do, yeah, it's pretty straightforward. Right, let's just go back a second and then I'll listen to them about the serious allegations.
That's a bit more flavoursome than the year I started in, isn't it? As well as 2 sentences that I said extemporaneously in a podcast about a year ago taken out of context. This is the stuff that makes the humour of rock bottom no longer satire. The essence of this article is... He started in 2013, and the best way you can sum up 500 videos and hundreds of hours of podcasts is...
Like grabber. Sweet Ken. Oh, just thinking about her, Ken. I just wish I had her. Sweet Ken.
We got opinions from both supporters and detractors. Loosey goose. We talked to some of those inside sources and they told us the entire time you were on the phone you were prodding them to say something, anything that could even be construed as negative, at which point they'd hear your ratty little paws typing furiously. This is why even the supporters that I have in this article always mar their sentences with something like, well, I don't agree with everything he says. Well, we've got no choice but to embrace you media. She was talking to these people for 20 minutes.
Okay, that was a lot. Christ. So to sum up, he's mad, again, he's mad that he's associated with these politicians despite associating with their party and talking about them. And then he's mad that he's mad about the very idea that a journalist, when they hear something that might sell well on the papers, would have the nerve to write it down? Am I hearing that right? And like, okay, it was taken out of context or whatever. Yeah, clip jumping's a thing. It happens to everyone. It's probably going to happen to me someday. It's annoying, but you just kind of got to live with it. And if you're ever confronted with it, you point it out and explain it. I will point out that I don't really think he does that here. And cut that out if he does, but I don't think he does. Okay, so to briefly sum up, no, he doesn't address this. Now, this is one of 2 mentions of, let's say, SA in the article, but of the 2 of them, this one has nothing to do with Geordie. Well, at least directly. So basically, in 2018, a politician called Luke Foley was accused of putting his hands down the back of a female reporter's dress in 2016. Now, Jordan defended him, as the article notes. It's just his word against hers. Fired as opposition leader for grabbing someone's ass while you're drunk? I don't know about that. Yikes, that's pretty bad. Now, Jordies goes on to say in this video that, oh, it only gained traction because there was a hidden plot in the media to exaggerate the story to cancel Foley.
As such, do forgive me as an observer and now bearer of this tactic that I'm somewhat skeptical of the one allegation they mercilessly drubbed Foley with relentlessly, particularly when it seems to follow the observable pattern that the actual crime the magnifying glass is picking up on is that he was on the wrong side of politics.
But really, I think this is just a case of partisanship. He's clearly on Geordie's side politically, so Geordie will defend him to the death, regardless of what he's done. Pretty awful for someone who thinks he's better than the rest of the mainstream media he so despises. Now, I'm only mentioning it here because it's not really relevant for the rest of the video. The article just comments on Geordie's remarks that he made about this subject, which were topical at the time. Pretty normal. Geordie, of course, goes on to try and make himself the victim in all this by screaming out of context, several times throughout the video.
You really care about what a YouTuber extemporaneously said as a side point, so much so that you clip it out of context to make it appear as if it's the main point.
But really, this is just a nothing burger. It's not related to Geordie, and it's really just a passing anecdote that he makes a big deal about. Now, normally I'd dig into this a bit more and I'd actually show you the full context here so that you could see for yourselves what it was. But suspiciously, conveniently you might say, That video where Geordie made those remarks has been taken down, scrubbed from the internet. I can no longer find it. If someone else can dig through some archives somewhere and dig it up, I'd be very happy to see it, but for the moment, when I'm researching this, I haven't been able to find it. So, I will talk about the other mention of essay in this article later on in my roundup section, but for now, back to the video. Alright, carrying on.
You don't see my detractors in this article starting with, he's got really nice teeth, but... Or, now look, I'm sure he's got a cock so massive that his nuts are actually just 2 moons orbiting around it, but that's beside the point.
Gee, I wonder why politicians wouldn't want to be associated with this guy. Can think of no reason whatsoever.
The first detractor they found was a secret
Oh, it just keeps getting better.
national source, which, oh gee, Giovanni, I wonder who that was. I'm just going to read this mysterious contributor's quote in this accent for no reason. Shanks's behaviour was abhorrent. Labour is clearly endorsing him and his attacks, bruz. Oh, who is this brave source speaking truth?
Okay, just for my viewers who won't know what the hell this is about, so there's this particular politician who Geordie's has a beef with, and yeah, it got pretty nasty between the two of them. I'll let other me take this away for a minute. Okay, so I'll go through this quickly. John Ballarat, or Bruz as Geordie's calls him, is a former Australian politician who served as the Deputy 18th Premier of New South Wales. Bruz and Geordie's have had beef for some time, with Geordie's making numerous videos about how Bruz is allegedly corrupt and staging at least one demonstration against him. In that now relatively famous demonstration, Geordie's dressed up like Luigi and confronted Bruz, comedy, Italian accent and all. Bruz is of Italian origin, by the way. Now, I shouldn't have to tell you that going after someone, even someone who is corrupt, using their racial background like this, well, it's racist. I can't put it any other way. It's a textbook example of racism. Whilst I'm not sure if Italian Australians have suffered from racism in the same way as, say, black Americans, that doesn't mean that this isn't racism. And because of this tactic, Bruz was able to completely ignore any criticism of him being corrupt in this instance by claiming racism. So good job there, Geordie's, really sticking it to power. Now, Bruz, for his part, supposedly had Geordie's mate Christo arrested for allegedly stalking him. The charges were dropped, and I say supposedly there, as there is no confirmation of this aside from Geordie's and Christo's word for it. It happened, but the specific events are a bit sketchy. So there's a lot of bad blood between Geordie's and Bruz, hence his repeated mentioning of him in this video. Anyways, back to it. Alright, carrying on.
Move to power. I guess we'll never know. Tell you what we do know though, apparently an anonymous source inside the Nationals told us that John Barilaro, the wilting lily himself who drops another petal every time someone slights the Italian community, apparently behind closed doors he refers to me as, quote, the Labour which, hey, Labour and shooters and fishes, please. Also, once we referred to Gladys Berejiklian, he apparently said words to the effect of, I tell ya, the Kurds should have finished the job. John, don't you mean the Turks? Oh, whatever, man, it's the same shit.
Okay, he's joking about this again, but it's like, okay, like, is this really funny? You made a slight at them for having fake sources, and you're either making a serious claim here or you're not. But this is just time wasting. What the hell does this have to do with anything apart from, again, getting in random personal attacks against this guy now? Like, he's on a roll, he can't stop. He just has to keep going after somebody every minute or his brain stops working. Alright, moving on.
I told you it's just Yilmaz if he was Deputy Premier. He should have said those things publicly. That is the best response to, what have you got to say to numerous allegations of widespread corruption? Oh, shut the fuck up, you homo. There's no comeback to that. But the SMH won't report on that. Why? Because the little back and forth the Telly and the Herald have about political correctness, that's what's known as branding. A superficial and redundant tiff to distract its readers from the fact that they're both campaigning for the same party. Which at this point, I'd like to ask, yet again, who set you up to this, Luz? We got the gatekeeper to answer the phone, would you rate? Which, I've got to say, I do love that the press has given that nickname to my producer who spends most of his time dressed as an Albanian wedding singer thinking about, oi, let's switch these chocolates around so they think they're biting into a Vita crumble, but it's actually a crunchy. Oh no! The gatekeeper strikes again! Christo's a very intelligent guy, but he was asking an extremely simple question.
Have you had any contact with John Barilaro on or off the record about this story?
Exactly the same question he asked the Daily Telegraph writer O'Doherty. You can watch that video here, and holy shit, you thought Stuart Little's answer was incriminating. Lucy said...
I'm not... Well, I don't know... I don't know if I'm under an obligation to answer that question.
Oh no, it's just it's you can say no comment, or you can answer. Because
well, I guess I
Okay, going into this, I didn't realise that for an outside perspective it'd be so hard to follow. So this guy, Christo, is, again, flash his full name on the screen, it escapes me at this moment, is sort of a team member of Friendlyjordies. He helps him with his stuff and produces channel basically, and acts as a sort of another reporter and researcher and does various things for him. Now, basically what happened is this journalist, Lucy, again, name's not strong with me at the moment, I don't know why. This journalist, Lucy, tried to call Jordies. She called and then talked to this guy for like ages, in which he kept like buzzing her about every single like political opinion that she had, and then eventually he gives it to Jordies, which we'll see at some point in this video. But like, it's just very weird. Like, can you not see why she'd be cagey? She calls expecting to talk to Jordies, gets you, and you start grilling her about every political thought she's ever had. And is she in cahoots with this person? Is she in cahoots with that person? It's like, well, like, can you not see why she's a bit cagey, mate? Christ. Carrying on.
I feel uncomfortable with being asked to disclose who I have and haven't spoken to.
But don't you think it is a kind of a responsibility as someone from the media?
Okay, no. People from the media don't have the responsibility to like basically keep a public list of every single person they've so much as looked at in conjunction with the story. They don't have to do that. And in fact, that would actually potentially breach the media's ability to carry out its job. Because let's say they're investigating, like, I don't know, whistleblowers in some big company. And, oh yes, we have to publish their whole name and phone number and picture in the paper if we use their info on this. No one's going to come forward to talk to them if every time they do, their names and everything are getting blasted. So, like, this is fucking stupid. What are you talking about? You guys supposedly are journalists. It's one of the things you do on this channel. Why are you acting confused about this? So there we go. Right there is where I was forced to stop my recording. Now, you may be asking, Unready, that seemed fine. There was nothing wrong with the video or the recording. It's not like you started watching porn halfway through the video or something. So why did you stop? Well, dear viewer, it has to do with a little thing called pacing. Now, when I do these videos, I usually watch whatever I react to at least 2 or sometimes even 3 times beforehand. And that's so I have a good grasp on the content before I do my reaction, so I can better analyse what's being said. So in that little section there, we got through 17 minutes of the 58-minute original video. But since I'd rewatched it, I knew that what was coming next would be almost unwatchable. You just saw how much whinging and whining Jordies does in that first 17 minutes alone. But I knew from my pre-watching that he just keeps going on with this for the rest of the bloody video. So rather than subject you all to 40 more minutes of him making needless personal attacks whilst drip-feeding us the actual content of the video, I figured I'd stop beating about the bush and just go at the article more directly. So let's cut through the veritable jungle of anger and poor taste that is the rest of this video and get to the good stuff. Get out your machete, dear viewer, because we're going to be hacking like it's 1995. Okay then, so about this article. As you are acutely aware by now, it is written by the tag team of Fergus Hunter and Lucy Cormack, and sits at a word count of 954 words. To illustrate to you a little bit more of why we are skipping so much of the video, this is how much of the article has been mentioned in the first 17 minutes. Yeah. If we kept going at that rate, we'd never bloody get through it. Okay, so to run through it quickly, the article is structured like so. So, the beginning, which I've already shown you in my React segment, which contains a brief introduction of who Friendlyjordies is and a little overview of some of his content. Next, we move on to discussing Geordie's role at the time in political discourse. Basically, the National Party doesn't like him and thinks he's a negative. Makes sense considering some of Geordie's content being extremely negative in his coverage of them, and the fact that they and Geordie's are political enemies. A Labour strategist shared similar concerns, stating that nasty style was starting to cause concern inside the party in New South Wales. The stuff he has done with John Ballarat is racist, the person said. My recommendation to people is to stay away. The article then recounts the beef between Bruz and Geordie's and describes Geordie's actions. At the same time, others in the Labour Party endorse Geordie's content and style, and there's a whole section stating that whilst he pushed boundaries, he also resonated with young voters, and that his stated positions on many environmental issues accord with core Labour principles. Then there is a section describing some other drama Geordie's was involved in at the time, which we'll get into in a moment. And then the article concludes with another section featuring many people praising Geordie's and his content, citing it as a brilliant way to connect with younger voters on the issues they cared about. Now at this point you may be wondering to yourself, that's it? That was the article that Friendlyjordies was bitching and whining about like a little child? Yes, viewer, it baffled me too. Not only does this article contain explicit praise of Geordie's at several points, but the negative stuff isn't even that bad. Honestly, it reads more of a summary of his involvement with certain events instead of being accusatory and negative. Honestly, I've read more negative articles in UK tabloids about Kate Middleton gaining weight or something like that. By comparison, this is just such a nothing article. It's just very mid. But this is how Geordie sums up the article in his video.
The magnifying glass back on you for a second. Let's start with what everyone assumes is the backbone of journalism, honesty. I mean, it's been pretty heavily covered so far, but we'll just do a quick recap. Defamation, double standards, quote mining, deliberate mischaracterization, blatant character assassination, consistent perfect vacuums of context, and straight up bald-faced lies to boot. Easy.
Yeah, that doesn't sound at all like we've just read, does it? Additionally, he continues to make bizarre claims regarding Lucy and Fergus's actions during a phone interview that completely fall apart if you apply just the smallest bit of common sense. So Geordie's gets butthurt about them not including a name of a certain charity he is promoting. But let's look at the whole call again in context. Here's Geordie explaining his plan for the call.
Time to let you in on our game plan. Christo and I thought, let's come up with a bunch of questions designed to elicit their values. When they get frustrated and demand to get a statement from me, Christo will then pass the phone on to me, and no matter what their first question is, I'll answer with, I think the best way to start it out is, do you know the t-shirt brand Lonely Kids Club? Then go on to advertise them as my only comment for their article. A, because they ask for any follow-up questions, I'll just say, all the profits of that go to the Animal Rescue Collective. They do great work. Like, after the bushfires, they stopped all of these animals from starving to death afterwards because they had no food or water. Therefore, by that being their only statement, we figured that they would be forced to undo some of the horrendous damage that they've inflicted upon this state by publishing that at the very least. Just the name Animal Rescue Collective. They instead wrote, when Shanks came to the phone, he spoke about his involvement in an ongoing koala fundraising project before hanging up. The Animal Rescue Collective is not a koala fundraising project, you redundant ignoramus. Nor did I once mention the koala sep in my Bruz video. Now they asked me a question-based
So they ring up expecting to talk to Geordie's. Then his mate Christo picks up and starts grilling them on completely bizarre questions relating to their political affiliations and getting really aggressive with it, like I showed you in the React section. Then Geordie's finally comes to the phone himself and starts ranting and raving about a certain charity and hangs up. Then they go and print this line in the article about Geordie's promoting a koala charity, which, okay, it's a wildlife charity, but, you know, hey, koalas are wildlife, they got that bit right. And as a result of this, Geordie proceeds to absolutely pitch a fit in his video, as you've just seen. But, like, what did he expect them to bloody do? He runs them through the ringer and basically trolls them for the entire call by his own admission. Then they report on what they heard, and since it doesn't include the exact wording he would have liked, he goes off his nut and says things like this.
Smear merchants playing a modified game of Chinese whispers where they're deliberately attempting to bung up the message. And yet she dare asks, where do you think the mainstream media fails? Well, it's a long chain spanning back a century, but the most recent blunder is they hired you. This is because point 5, you have the most evil set of priorities I could possibly imagine.
Remember, of course, that they gave him an opportunity to provide a statement in writing, which this exact wording would have come out in. But oh no, he couldn't do that. Oh no, that'd be lowering himself. Fucking idiot. But perhaps I'm being a bit unfair, as there is one bit in this article we haven't talked about yet. And it does include a bit that is genuinely unfair to Jordies. Let's bring it up on the screen now. Okay, so if you're looking at this confused, then yes, one sentence. It's one sentence. That is the most negative thing about Jordies in that article. A single sentence. Basically, the sentence prior to this one ended with a mention of sexual assault. And since the sentence comes directly after, you may assume, because of context, that Jordies is being investigated for SA2. Now, it's not totally wrong, as Jordies has been in trouble with the Australian police many times as a result of his own actions. But I do agree that this is a little bit misleading, and frankly, I don't think it should have been included in the article. However, Jordies once again categorises this as a blatant hit piece and spends a good 22 minutes on this one line alone. 22 minutes! He rants and raves about everything under the sun, going on tangents several times in an attempt to justify his temper tantrum to his audience. He also continues to go off on poor Lucy and Fergus the whole time, saying things like this.
Now this is the important part, pay attention to this. Police are also investigating a complaint against Shanks, implying that I'm being investigated for sexual harassment, which means you know what time it is. That's right, it's press council time, you malevolent sacks of shit.
But frankly, I don't think they deserved any of this. What Jordies is doing here is pretty disgusting. Remember, Jordies is abusing real-life people, using their real names and pictures to do so to his audience of millions. This video alone has 1.2 million views, all for the sake of this one line, which if you take it in the context of the whole article, very well it may have been a mistake. The rest of the article is overwhelmingly fair to Jordy and even gives him a large amount of praise, particularly towards the end. So the inclusion of this one line may have been a genuine mistake of the authors, or the work of a cheeky editor, but I don't think we can conclude, based on the rest of the article, that it was a deliberate hit job. But that's not how Jordy sees it. Remember this bit?
Different author, different flavour? No, the exact same new male wrote both articles. Didn't write one when I interviewed Rudd, but did display a photo from it front and centre in this hit piece.
So let me get this straight. The article that includes a very balanced split between negative and positive coverage is a hit piece? To put it in terms of numbers, the article features around 8 paragraphs of negative coverage, whilst having a whopping 14 paragraphs of praise and positive coverage. To put it in context, the whole article is only 22 paragraphs long, which means that over half the article is actually praising Friendlyjordies. So what he says about the article overall is absolute crap, and not backed up by the facts. Rather, the only way any of it is negative at all is because he spends so long priming you in the video to think that it is so awful, adding an imaginary context in order to make things seem like there is a deep conspiracy in the Australian media to not cover things that he, Friendlyjordies, wants to see. In his eyes, everyone's out to get him personally, which is absolutely fucking mental in an article which praises him for more than 50% of its run. What did he expect? Did he expect a puff piece like a North Korean propagandist would write about Kim Jong-un? Like, what the hell, bro? Talk about having a victim complex. I'd be so chuffed to have an article like this written on me. I'd be so happy I'd show it to bloody everyone. Heck, I'd show it to my dad. Look, Dad, I made the papers, I'd say. What I wouldn't do is make a video like this on it, which is nothing but 58 minutes of unsubstantiated whinging and crying, intercut with horrifically bad jokes and personal insults about the journalists who authored the piece. What's even worse is that he overcomplicates everything to such a massive extent. The guy's got the biggest main character syndrome I've ever seen. Remember when I talked about his victim complex just above? It gets worse. So he tries to pretend that this one article on him, this one 954 word article, is a symptom of everything that's wrong with the mainstream media. Like here.
Partisan, gloriously, unashamedly, wear it as a badge of honour partisan, yet looking at these grotesque and shameful numbers, I feel even I could learn a thing or two about shilling from the covert cum rags of Costello. Their defence line of this big-nosed walking caricature promising to clean up corruption, all of a sudden you shine a light on it that's brighter than your bizarre fetishisation of the f***ing Vivid Festival. This is because if Labour was elected, it would mean that the current parasites that have latched onto the colon of the government would no longer be able to suck this state dry.
Christ, even more than someone like Hassan, this was the biggest example of main character syndrome I've ever seen. Holy cow. Now to top it all off, he makes this one final idiotic statement at the end of the video completely without irony.
Personally, I see the people who watch me as being a little more important than corrugated iron sheets or washing machines. I see them as human beings.
Okay, Geordie, if that's the case, then why do you have to constantly prime your viewers to hate the article before you'd even shown it? If that's the case, why were you so upset about the wording they used for your koala funding thing? Are your viewers not smart enough to do a quick Google search for it? I thought they were human beings, not sheets of corrugated iron or washing machines. Come on, mate. And that's what I find so bizarre about him and his content. He spends so much time desperately seeking, begging for attention and clout. And yet when he gets it, in the form of a pretty bland newspaper article, for example, he flips his lid because it isn't unflinchingly positive. Now, if you've seen the film American Psycho, do you remember the bit where Christian Bale's character is staring at a business card that he thinks is better than his, but to us as the viewer is pretty much identical? Do you remember how angry he got in that scene?
Look at that subtle off-white coloring. The tasteful thickness of it. Oh my god. It even has a watermark. Something wrong?
That scene perfectly summed this video. This is an angry schizo post of a video which should have stayed in Geordie's head or on the notepad of the therapist or psychiatrist that he should be seeing. I genuinely believe, in my opinion, allegedly, in Minecraft, whatever I'm supposed to say there, I genuinely believe that he has some serious issues with anger management and emotional regulation, as no normal well-adjusted person makes a video like this while staring at the camera like they are simultaneously having a heart attack and pushing out a kidney stone. Australia, come on, you can do better than this guy and boy. Seriously, why are all the Australian political YouTubers insane, apparently? But just to hammer it in one more time, this kind of content may be entertaining, in an angry man screaming at stuff on the internet kind of way. But it does not result in any positive change to the world. He can make his little vids and rant and rave away, but ultimately that's all he's able to do. Now, before I finish, I can already hear the comments now. But Unready, he had his house bombed. Can't you see why he's a little angry and maybe a little paranoid? Well, dear viewer, it's funny that you say that. This is why I actually selected this video. This video was uploaded in 2020, which is at least a year before the firebombing of his house by my estimation. So this isn't a stress response brought on by trauma and a threat to his life. It is just how he is. Hell, I reckon he came out of the womb acting like this, honestly. Okay, right, that's it for the video, everyone. Thanks again for AJ1777 for the topic suggestion. If you'd like to suggest a topic, head on down to the comments after you have liked the video and subscribed. I do check on them, and you never know, maybe your idea will make it into a video. Anyways, I have been Unready, and I will see you next time. Bye bye!